To understand the American economy, it is important to understand the history that shaped it. It can be argued that America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, was created due to the economy. The heartless and evil British were taxing America into oblivion. This was due to the fact that the British had just won the French Indian War, which left them immensely in debt. The Americans, however, saw it as if the man was trying to keep them down and refused to fund the evil empire. Clever rabble-rousers coined the term no taxation without representation. This ideology helped fuel the American Revolution. When America won the Revolution, they found themselves in major debt to everyone. They were indebted to their French allies, the British, and all states retained major debt to each other. This brought the very first large-scale economic policy, Alexander Hamilton's financial plan. Hamilton's plan had three goals: establish a national bank, assume all state debts, and protect American manufacturing. Due to the colonial history of constant foreign intervention, Americans demanded nothing less than complete independence. This led to over a century of isolationism. Throughout American history, America has constantly placed large tariffs to protect domestic manufacturing, despite the fact America's economy largely relied on agriculture. Cash crops such as tobacco and cotton were the backbone of the economy. Cash crops required immense manual labor, however, causing demand for slavery to constantly grow. The issue of slavery all came to a front during the Civil War. During the war, President Abraham Lincoln declared all slaves, except for those in the middle colonies, free. When the North won the war, the South nearly collapsed altogether due to their over-reliance of slaves. The Industrial Revolution brought large sweeping change across the country. No longer forced to rely on farming, many people immigrated to large cities. Quite possibly the most important effect of the Industrial Revolution was that it gave women the opportunity to work. This opportunity, however, was not glorious. The factories were ill-lit, disease-ridden, and had no safety code whatsoever. The factories were exceptional at mass production, but more importantly, they manufactured early feminism. One of the largest events in the United States economy history was the Great Depression. Never had such a wide-scale global collapse had ever been seen. America was not safe from it. The crash occurred due to over-speculation in the stock market. October 29, 1929, Black Tuesday, the entire stock market crashed. This caused Americans to lose all faith that was in the system and quickly wanted to withdraw money from the banks. Problems occurred, however, when everyone wanted to do this. Everyone wanted their money, but there was not enough to go around. Known as a bank run, the rapid withdrawal of immense amount of money caused several banks to collapse. The president at the time, Herbert Hoover, was a large believer in laissez-faire economics and decided the best thing to do was nothing. The Depression was not correcting itself, however. By 1932, people were not fans of Hoover's non-intervention policy. This led to the election of Franklin D. Roosevelt, who ran on the message that he would do something.
Roosevelt was convinced the United States must intervene in
two New Deal policies, which were large-scale attempts at boosting the economy. Many of the programs tended to boost jobs, and others were insurance that people could survive while unemployed, such as Social Security. The biggest turning point in United States economic history soon followed. Once the Allies had won World War II, there was no turning back. America was the largest superpower in the world, and could no longer retain its isolationism. Directly after World War II, America had one of its largest economic booms. The war had made the country rich. The ending of isolationism brings us to today, where America reigns as an economic titan. America has the largest GDP in the world and is deeply rooted in global economics. Apart from stagflation that occurred in the 70s and the subprime mortgage crisis of 2008, the economy has remained generally prosperous and consistent. So what about America's economy in 2018? Well, President Trump has taken a very aggressive approach to global economics, starting trade wars with countries ranging from China all the way to Canada, placing extremely high tariffs on billions of dollars of goods. Domestically, Trump has slashed taxes. Generally, people love tax cuts, but the cuts do raise some cause for concern. Taxes help fund social services such as Social Security, a service that America will only continue to be being used more and more as baby boomers retire. By stretching the budget thin and starving it of taxes, it is unclear how Trump intends to make up for this deficit that will surely ensue. Many people question Trump's economic approach, asking if the trade wars will be best for the country or Trump's businesses. Only time will tell. Regardless, it is a brilliant political move, as in both starting trade wars and slashing taxes, Trump continues to appeal to the middle class.
The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, commonly known as North Korea, is the most closed country in the world. Also, they are well known as one of the poorest countries in the world. This country is famous for failing economic policy and killed millions of people just because of starvation. In this documentary, we will specifically look over the reason why North Korea is failing. After 36 years of Japanese colonization, Korea became free. However, due to the start of Cold War, the Korean peninsula was divided by two. North part was ruled by the Soviet Union, while South part was ruled by the United States. After 3 years of trusteeship, North Korea was established in 1948 by the Soviet Union and their leader Il Sung Kim. In the 1940s, North Korea developed faster than any other countries of Asia. One of the biggest reasons for this rapid development was heavy industry factories. During colonization, Japanese Empire built the heavy industry factories such as weapons, ships, and steel factories to carry those conveniently to the Chinese frontier. After independence, North Korea owned those factories, and with those factories, produced weapons and chemical composer in order to invade South Korea. However, during war, they all got bombed. After the war, North Korea showed pretty remarkable economic growth. During the political conflict between China and the Soviet Union, North Korean government acquired technologies and facilities from the Soviet Union and resources from China. With those factors, North Korea exported various products, imported industrial products, mechanized. With those factors, North Korea exported various products, imported industrial products, and mechanized agriculture. North Korea was indeed richer than South Korea until the 1980s. However, since party economy and military economy were divided from the 1970s, private market decreased and more money was invested in the military budget. And three policies struck the economy, and the North Korean economy collapsed rapidly. In 1988, there was an Olympic in South Korea. North Korea got shocked that they lost the competition with South Korea and decided to open the World Festival of Youth and Students. However, the economic profit of this festival was $0. Every fee, such as plane ticket, hotel, and food, was paid by the government. Also, the North Korean government made a huge mistake during this time. They produced a huge number of money for foreigners, and this caused inflation. $6 billion spent on this event. North Korea required a dam. Therefore, they decided to build a dam in a region called Nampo. The purpose was right. However, there wasn't enough technology and money, and North Korean leader gave so limited time to finish building a dam. Thousands of soldiers and civilians participated in this construction. After construction, the dam was a complete disaster. It required repair every day, and it didn't function properly. $7 billion was spent on this construction. In 1939, the North Korean scientists invented synthetic fiber called phenolone. It's made of coal and limestone, which were placed plenty in North Korea. Therefore, the North Korean government decided to build a huge phenolone factory facility. However, due to the lack of technology of mass production, this factory didn't work. Also, during the process of construction, numerous trees were causing flood, and the flood caused the price of coal to increase. The government couldn't bear the large electricity bill and coal price. Therefore, Suncheon Phenolone Industrial Estate was neglected. This cost $10 billion. Communist countries in Europe were collapsed and market that North Korea could export the products decreased. No more land lease from the Soviet Union, no more resources, which caused factories to stop working. In this period, 80% of factories in North Korea stopped running due to the lack of resources. Many natural disasters caused a decrease in the supply of food. It caused arduous march in North Korea. The casualty of starvation was about from 330,000 to 3 million. And throughout this process, North Korea became one of the poorest countries in the earth. In the 2000s, the risk continued. The government is seeking to reform the currency. However, it caused hyperinflation. The price of rice has been 30 times in 2 months. And during this process, second leader of North Korea, Chung Il-kim, died, and his son, Chung Un-kim, became the new leader of this country. Kim Jong-un studied in Western country when he was young, and he has a knowledge of free market structure. He decided to adapt capitalist market structure partially. North Korean government decided to allow people to sell their product in the market, which formed the free market. However, still, most of the domestic market is still controlled by the government. Currently, North Korean economy is much better than 20 years ago, but there are still many steps to get over in order to escape from the status of poor country.
This documentary, I'm going to be talking about the economic and political horror show that is Venezuela. Now, some background information before we start is that their president currently is Maduro, and he recently got voted in for another 6-year term. Now, they're in an economic depression. No one is doing anything about the economic crisis, which means that the state of the economy is continuing to worsen. It used to be the richest country in Latin America for the same reason that's making its economy suffer currently. Its dependency on oil. More than 90% of exports are oil, and oil makes up more than 50% of its GDP. It currently has the highest inflation rate in the world, which sits at 254%. Now, before Nicolas Maduro, there was Chavez. Now, always tried to appeal to the poor. Chavez was the one who made the country so dependent on oil in the first place. And when oil prices were high, that wasn't so bad for the country. Basically solidify the country's dependency on oil by basically just destroying any other chances of any industries forming. He was buying out all of the private sector, essentially, and then he just started to make the country's resources come from imports. The expenses became too high and Venezuela had to start borrowing in order to sustain the economy under Chavez's rule. The economy state started to worsen under Chavez's rule because there was no more trust in the Venezuelan economy. After Chavez's death, as the economy started to get even worse, the country could no longer afford the imports that they were living off of before. Now, how did the crisis begin? Venezuela was actually doing quite well before, for a good amount of time, but they were just way too dependent on a single commodity, as we said before, that was oil. Now, as a result of its great dependency on oil and its incompetent government, Venezuela's economy is suffering to the point where their people are starving. Now again, 50% of their GDP depends solely on oil. Since it is so dependent on oil, its GDP moves with the oil prices. And while it isn't very intelligent as a country to risk everything by just placing all your hope into one single commodity, it is especially inefficient to continue doing that after the price started decreasing. The reason why they're so dependent on it in the first place is because Venezuela has the largest known oil reserve in the world. Now, oil prices were going so far down that they just dragged the Venezuelan economy down with them. GDP started decreasing around the time when oil prices started fluctuating, but oil prices didn't stop there, and neither did the GDP. Now, why it probably isn't getting better anytime soon. The government being incompetent is one reason. They have many ways of attempting to step in. Looking at Maduro, there seems to be no chance of any change in current policies in place. And oil will probably remain the main focus of the Venezuelan economy. The government, in theory, could take action to diversify their economy. Another is the fact that no one really is willing to. People would have to put their money into a failing country and invest in order to shift the focus of the economy, which is risky considering how bad the situation really is. Now, people would much rather invest their money into something they truly believe could prosper. It is much safer to just invest in the oil industry as there is a guarantee. This is a cycle that traps Venezuela in a position where it always ends up having a comparative advantage in oil, which is proving to be a big issue for them. Now, what the government could do but isn't. One thing that they could do is they could tax the oil industry. And by doing that, they can make some extra money to spend on things that they could actually help their economy with. One thing that they can do with the money is fund or subsidize the creation of other manufacturing industries. Now, by doing that, they would be taking some of the weight off of the oil industry. The problem with the Venezuelan government is the fact that they refuse to believe that oil is the problem. Whenever someone brings up those issues, the government dodges and deflects by looking at oil in the past and what it's done for their country. Now, what they fail to see is the fact that oil can be a helpful commodity, but when it equates to 50% of your GDP, there is an issue. And when the government is blinded by it, it's an even bigger issue. I mean, Venezuela has the worst negative growth rate at 8%, the highest inflation rate, and they've also not reported their unemployment rate in the recent years, which reflects badly on it. Now, some predictions for the future. Since Maduro only recently got voted in for another 6 years, the government is probably going to continue ignoring all the problems that their economy is facing. As a result of this, the Venezuelan economy will suffer even more than they already are. Inflation is set to reach 1,300 in the next year. The government is not planning to do anything at all to address the real problem in Venezuela, the oil. That still amounts to the majority of their exports and half of their economy, and the government fails to see the problem there. The people will continue to starve as they have been, the country's economy will continue to suffer, which is all essentially what makes their processes so